affordable snow trail. We're starting out in about 12 to 18 inches of snow. We're going to be at about 5,200 feet. We have 2 separate 3,000 foot climbs to do, and the Snowtail site is reporting about 30 inches of snow up on top. We also have weather incoming. We got a snowstorm that is supposed to dump a bunch more snow on us, and the temperatures are supposed to drop to as low as -12. Well, you guys drove all the way to Idaho for snow. I think we found it.
Okay, I want to try something that I've never really seen done on YouTube before. I'm going to walk you guys through the complete loadout of what I'm taking in my vehicle for this trip. Then during the trip, I'm going to film the highlights, like what is actually working, what's failing, you know, what I wish that I had brought that I forgot, because I'm sure I'll forget something. You know, speaking of stuff that might fail, I'm actually going to be testing a $109 sleeping bag on this trip in potentially -12. So that's going to be really interesting. This could end up being a really cold trip. I want to walk you through all the gear that I'm taking, then we'll recap on what worked, what didn't work. This type of video is supposed to be a learning video for all of us. By the way, these teaching videos make almost no money. Definitely click the like button and subscribe. It's the easiest way to support the channel. If you notice, we are this close to 50,000 subs. We have almost made it. Other options for supporting the channel are to join as a member. That way you get exclusive behind the scenes videos. Thanks as always for your support. Let's go ahead and jump into the gear. All the links for the gear that we're going to be talking about will be in the description. And of course, that is actually one other way to support the channel. If you buy through the links, it helps support the channel. So thanks again for your support. Here we go. Okay, so first things first, there's a couple things I'm going to need to install inside of this vehicle for it to be converted from a rock crawler to a subzero snow machine. The number one thing that I need is I need heat for when I'm sleeping. -12 is very, very cold. So I've showed you guys this heater before in a past video. This is a propane heater. It has its own area that burns all the fuel. So it pulls air from the outside through one of the internal chimneys, and then it has a secondary layer that exhausts. So you don't end up with any moisture building up in your vehicle from burning propane. It only puts off nice dry heat. So I want to install that heater on the inside of there. Well, future Nate here. I guess you know that we survived the trip. I did not get that heater installed. We had a problem with one of the valves and couldn't get it to work. So I ran out of time. See, I'm just like you. I am always running out of time. As a backup, I have the heater that I love to hate on. It's the little buddy heater. I don't really want to use it because the problem is it creates a ton of condensation, which means you're getting up in the morning when it is extremely cold and all your stuff is wet. And there's nothing worse than trying to get out of your sleeping bag and, you know, having to put on wet clothes. The other thing I need to install in the vehicle is a radio. If I don't have enough time to do that, I'll use a handheld so we can all talk to each other. I'll give you guys one guess at how that played out. It's like this guy thinks he has time. You have 3 kids, one of them's 2 years old. You have no time. And then finally, this vehicle does not have great headlights. I mean, it's a rock crawler after all for running trails, which most people do during the day. So I wanted to get much brighter lights on it, especially since we're gonna be driving in a snowstorm / potentially a blizzard. And then also these ones are these cool lights from Oxito where it has like the super bright spotlight, but then it also has these amber like fog lights. So I gotta get these installed tonight. Okay, so next up, obviously air down equipment. So I switched out the tires on this. Originally I had these mud tires, these Firestone mudders. These are, I'm sure, great tires in the mud, but they're terrible in the snow and ice. They don't have enough siping, and then the gaps are too big, so it discards all the snow. And when you want to do snow on snow grip, you actually want some of these gaps to retain the snow. A lot of people don't believe me, but ask anybody that designs snow tires, that's actually how it works. So I switched about for these all-terrain tires. It's the Mickey Thompson Baja Boss ATs. These are great in the snow, have a lot more horizontal siping on all the lugs and smaller gaps in the middle here for retaining the snow. These guys do really good. And then these are the bead grip rims. So the deal with that is that allows you to go to a lower PSI and actually not risk de-beading your tire. And the type of snow that we're gonna be in, you're gonna wanna be airing these all the way down to about 4 PSI. So having that combo is pretty important in order to do that. I mean, obviously you want a tire gauge to be able to read your pressure. Airing down 37s is a pain in the butt. So I have these. These are a little device I can screw onto each stem and it will auto air it down. These ones only auto air it down to 17 PSI. So then from 17 down from there, I still have to air it down myself. And that's why I have one of these devices, which is a device that will pull the valve stem and tell you the pressure, and you can air it down nice and fast. That's the air down kit. This is my tool bag. I went ahead and customized this tool bag to make sure that it has all the custom tools necessary to work on this 80 series Land Cruiser. This is my normal tool bag that I take with me for the Tundra. So I have the right tools in here for being able to work on axle nuts and everything custom to this vehicle. I also have a tiny little survival bag inside of there that has water pills, waterproof matches, different basic stuff that just kind of goes with me everywhere I go for purifying water and basic survival. Okay, let's talk recovery gear. Really simply, I'm bringing a high lift jack. I have one of the Pro Eagles, but this is a much more versatile tool in deep snow that we're going into. So I have a high lift jack. I have a shovel. That's the DMOS shovel, foldable shovel that the arm extends out and gives you a nice big shovel to dig with. You don't want to be trying to dig out a vehicle with one of those tiny little foldable shovels. This has extra recovery steps. So I always bring extra gloves. So this is a pair of waterproof gloves for like putting snow chains on. That's what those are, snow chains. Being able to work on your vehicle when it's really cold. So this is one pair of gloves. There's at least 3 more pairs of gloves in the vehicle. When you work on a vehicle, your gloves get wet, and then if you have to work on it again, you don't want to be putting frozen gloves on. So extra pairs of gloves is key. This is for the chains, chain tensioners. This is a sidewall patch. You'd be surprised how much you can destroy sidewalls in deep snow. So that's why I'm bringing that. I've got a big thing of Gorilla Tape, toilet paper. This whole thing is extra nuts and bolts that are the sizes that are on my vehicle. So I just got an assortment of nuts and bolts in there. This is a spare chain for the electric chainsaw. I also have a spare bar, and then that's bar oil. This is an electric one. You can cut through about anywhere from like 20 to 25 trees with that saw before the battery goes dead. And then I have an ability to charge that battery with the car and with the power pack. I've got the Tread Pros traction boards with the straps for securing to the roof. Inside of here, this is a ratchet strap. Ratchet straps come in handy if you ever break an axle and have to tow a car out on a piece of wood. I've got 4 different soft shackles and 2 hard shackles, which probably seems excessive, but with the type of recoveries that you'll do in the snow, a lot of times you slide. So if you start to slide off of a steep hill and you're hanging over the edge, you end up having to do recoveries that have all these weird angles that you want to be pulling. I have 2 different recovery straps in here. Moving on. Let's talk clothing really quick. So everybody has their own personal clothing stuff. Here's what I would say for deep snow and negative 12 degrees. I have 2 different pairs of snow boots. I have a low pair and a tall pair. These are more comfortable to drive in. those keep you alive in deep, wet, cold snow. So you can change. Getting a wet pair of boots can ruin your day. So this is why I carry two. Also, to make sure that I don't end up with a wet pair of boots, I still carry these. I call them gaiters. I don't know what other people call them, but they hook around the bottom of your boot and go up to just below your knee. And they keep snow from like sneaking up your pant and getting inside your boot. I think they're amazing. Everybody found those, I don't know, sometime around World War I, and for some reason, a lot of us have stopped using them. They work really good. I also use, obviously, wool socks. That little pile right there is lots and lots of wool underlayers. So, wool undershirt, wool long johns. Everything in here is breathable fabric, no cotton really to be found, because you're looking for stuff that's going to wick moisture away from your body and keep you dry. I've got another base layer that is the next layer up from there. That's a huge parka jacket, extremely thick. These are my normal pants that I'd probably wear for the whole entire adventure unless I get too wet, or if we end up in really deep snow having to do recoveries all day, then I'll throw on the bib. These are waterproof. Those are water resistant. Inside of that backpack, there's a reason it's sealed. I have no intention of using what is in there, but in a worst case scenario that I have to hike out, that has a fresh set of clothes that includes waterproof pants and a waterproof jacket. So if I did have to hike out, I don't want to start hiking in wet clothes and risk hypothermia. So I would change into a fresh set of dry clothes, and then I would hike from there. So that's kind of my clothing situation. Obviously there's a beanie up there. I have more clothes, obviously boxers and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so here's our kind of everything else section. So after talking about that bag over there that has the extra set of dry clothes for hiking out, when you look over here, we've got a pair of snowshoes. These are really useful if you do have to hike out. And then of course, if you do plan on hiking out, you really want to have offline maps. So this is an InReach. This has offline maps for the entire area where we will be traveling. And then also my cell phone has offline maps as well from a different mapping software. So we actually have two different types of maps to reference the area. In addition to that, as far as survival gear goes, we've got an additional survival jacket. We've got a good solid first aid kit with us. Some extra straps for like tourniquets and things like that. Again, another set of dry gloves, because dry gloves are key. Here's another strap in here. There's a small, tiny shovel that really more than anything just gets used for digging a bathroom when you need one. These are some gloves for working on a vehicle. And then this is a charged jumper for jumping the battery. At -12, it's easy to kill your battery. You better believe having an ability to jump a dead battery is pretty important out there. So this is kind of like an interesting little survival kit. Most of the stuff in here comes from a company called Uncharted that sent me a kit, and then I kind of augmented it. I'll do a video about that in the future. They're actually sold out of these right now, so I'll tell you about it when you can actually get one. But it's a great little kit that comes in a waterproof case that's easy to set up as your survival kit. In addition to that, this is normal camping stuff. So I've got 5 gallons of water. I've got the Jetboil Genesis for doing all my cooking. I've got, even though we're only going to be out for a couple days, I've got about a week and a half worth of dried goods food with me, as well as some gummy bears, because I assume that's necessary for survival. I've got a torch for lighting wood, and the reason I have that is when you're in the snow, a lot of times wood is very wet, so having a good torch to get stuff going makes having a fire a lot more doable. Camp light, which is just nice to have, especially in the snow at night. And then I've got a -25 degree bag and a mat, an insulated sleeping mat to sleep on top of in the back of the truck. All right, we are off. Made it to the trailhead, and snow conditions are nice. It's nice and fluffy. Running the tires at 5 PSI right now, so far we're floating pretty good. It's never really a bad day when you get to follow Mr. Nate from Dirt Lifestyle going snow wheeling. It's gonna be a good times. If I do anything too stupid, I've got them in front of me to pull me out, which is, you know, a good thing, because I might do something stupid. Well, it's starting to get slick. It's an interesting consistency, right?
Yeah, I can't figure out what it wants to be. It wants to be fresh and it wants to be old at the same time.
Well, it's getting fun now. We got some deep snow. We've got diffs dragging in the snow. And we still have at least another 1,000 feet to climb. You guys said you wanted snow, right? Did I get this wrong?
No, you definitely didn't get it wrong.
Oh yeah, it's getting blustery. Check it out, guys. It is snowing. We got big holes. I love this. I just don't get to get out and do this kind of thing enough. It is so cool. It's definitely getting slick. It's hard to walk in, so if it's hard to walk in, I feel like that qualifies as potentially hard to drive on.
Yeah. Well, that's what's amazing about snowmobiling, is you'll go places where you actually depend on the vehicle, because in the right kind of snow, you can't walk through it, but if you have low enough tire pressure, you can drive in it.
I got snowshoes, just in case we have to walk out.
I've thought about bringing snowshoes because I have them too. I feel like I don't want to get roasted so hard for wearing snowshoes.
Mine's more of like the safety precaution thing.
It's a good idea.
We actually, where we're gonna go to the very peak here, if for some reason we legit broke down, and let's say
there's a way to hike out.
There's a 6-mile hike out from there to town. Then we don't have to eat each other, so that's great. No Donner Pottery dinners on this trip. I cannot believe how big of a difference like 2 PSI just made on my tires. This thing's going so much better.
Oh yeah, dude, for sure. Once you get under like 9-ish is where you'll notice the difference PSI to PSI. Like you notice the difference between like 8 and 6, and then you get to a point where you notice 6 and 5, and then 4 and 3, and then it's seriously like so incremental when you get to those lower pressures.
We've reached the point where things get interesting. It is snowing hard. It is, we got a snowdrift here that's plenty deep enough to get very stuck. He's pushing his way through right now, but it's a lot of back and forth to get, I don't know, maybe 10 feet at a time. So we'll see how it goes. We get everything that we asked for. Deep snow, new snow, and we're getting stuck. All right, well, we've been stuck on this stretch for, I don't know, at least an hour. We probably made it about 200 feet. You can hear Nate up in the background. He's still just hitting it, and make about a car length at a time, and then have to back up and plow again. So we're gonna do an experiment. I'm gonna throw snow chains on mine because I have chains that fit 37s, and we're gonna see if they work. I've used chains a lot on icy roads, but I've never really used them in deep powder. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they help at all. The tires are aired down so much that might not work. They might try to walk off, so we'll have to see if this works or not. It's an experiment. First of all, putting on chains on 37s that is already aired down is very, very challenging. It probably doesn't help that it's almost 2 feet of snow. But the results are kind of interesting. So with chains, if I'm following their trail where they already pre-plowed it, I've got a lower vehicle than them because I'm only on 37s, they're on 39s. So with the chains, I actually had a lot more traction and was able to just kind of get in their trail and follow up without really getting stuck very much. However, when I went to the head of the pack and tried to break trail, when you're breaking trail, you're just ramming your car into the snowbank and you just keep backing it up and ramming it and working your way slowly up the hill. With the chains on the rear, the second that you would stop, I would let off the gas as fast as possible and it didn't matter. The chains would still dig the rear end super deep. So they don't float. I mean, they dig. That would make sense.
Let me know when you're ready. Yeah, I imagine everything. Is it still 5 degrees out? Yep. Yeah, I'm in R. Let's do it. Yeah, your soft cycle's been dragging through the snow too, so it's way for Yeah, I see the imprint on the bottom of my bumper, and then I see where I backed up and tried to get out. I see where I backed up to try to get out, and then where my front tires just sunk like 2 more feet deep. Like, we're on some pretty deep snow right here. Yeah, it got pretty intense real quick as soon as we started climbing this hill.
It's a big hole I made.
Yeah, well, some deep stuff.
I was able to crawl through a bunch of this, but this is too soft. This stretch I'm not gonna be able to crawl. I'm gonna have to just keep, I mean, I might run out of gas, but
I only have 2 gallons, okay? Remember that. So here's the current situation. We have had to surrender and decided to make camp. We're trying to flatten out. This is the only spot the road's been wide enough to have a pull off. So we've been trying to flatten it out. And these guys, this one got stuck, that one got stuck. We got that one unstuck with traction boards. We're good. And now,
all right, I'm ready for round 2 when you are.
This one's coming out. Guys, get yourself a Yankum rope. These things are worth their money. It's so much better than the sudden jerk of a strap. So much better on the machines. There we go. It was a pretty good fight to try to find a flat spot. It is getting really cold outside, so it snowed all day, and then sometime tonight, late tonight, it's supposed to clear up, and when the skies get clear, the temperature is going to drop significantly. So it's about like 10 degrees outside right now, and then after it clears up, it's still snowing right now. After it clears up, it's going to drop into the negatives. I'm sleeping on the bed mat, little bed board in the back of the Land Cruiser, and I'm sleeping. This is a negative 25 degree sleeping bag. Negative 25 degrees means it's going to be comfortable somewhere about 20 to 30 degrees warmer than that. So to stay comfortable tonight, I had to go back to the old reliable little buddy heater. So got the little buddy heater running. It's honestly pretty cozy in here. It feels super comfortable right now. I'm probably going to turn this heater off, climb into the sleeping bag. And I'm kind of curious in the middle of the night whether I'm going to have to turn it back on. So we'll see.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. It is cold. Well, I slept in here fine actually. It's got to be pretty close to zero, but this bag, it's like $109 sleeping bag from Teton, and it works great. It's a minus 25-degree bag. It worked awesome. I was not cold at all last night. Really only used a little buddy heater to warm up the car for getting into the covers. So you start with everything warm. Other than that, you really didn't need it. I'm glad I had it, but I definitely would have had to have it.
Okay, so as you can see, the trip got really interesting really fast. It definitely got cold, and we were dealing with some of the weirdest snow conditions ever. It was just, I've seen unpackable snow, but this stuff just really didn't want to work with. So we spent most of the evening plowing snow really hard and not getting very far. We camped out and it peaked out at somewhere, I don't know, when we were sleeping. The coldest temperature we saw was -5 degrees, but when we were sleeping, I'm sure it got colder. So it was a pretty interesting trip. It was some of the hardest snow I've ever snow wheeled in Dirt Lifestyle. Nate from Dirt Lifestyle, he said the same thing. So let's talk about what were the clear winners and losers on gear. The clear winner was that cheap sleeping bag. I know $109 is a lot of money, but when you're talking about a -25-degree sleeping bag, when I first started looking, because I needed to get one on short notice because all my other bags are up at our base camp, the cheapest one I was finding was like a mummy bag at REI for like $450. So when I found that like hunting bag for $109, I was like, oh, I've got to give it a try. So for a cheap -25-degree bag, that was incredible. I used the buddy heater only to warm the car up at night. So when you're climbing into bed, you start out warm, which I think is a big deal. If you start out and your feet are already frozen, it can be really hard to catch up throughout the night and get back to feeling warm. The little buddy heater, of course, filled the cab with condensation along with my breath. So I was scraping ice off the inside of my windows in the morning, which is one of the annoying things about using a propane heater inside of your car that doesn't have proper venting. But all in all, barely had to use the propane heater just to get into bed. Rest of the night was totally warm and comfortable inside of that sleeping bag. I'll put a link to that. I mean, if you need a winter sleeping bag and don't want to spend a small fortune, that thing is awesome. Super comfortable and super thick as well. The other clear winner was the Yankum ropes. So I had brought straps, which is really dumb because I even have a dynamic rope. I just didn't think about it. Like, I was packing for this trip last minute. Like, Nate reached out to me like 2.5 days before we left and was like, hey, I need some snow. So I was in the middle of a lot of stuff and working on another video. So I didn't really get to put too much thought into packing, but the straps that have no dynamic stretch don't really work very good in the snow. You're just yanking each other around. You want that dynamic load to build up in the rope and then pull the car out of the hole that it's stuck in. But one thing that I did have right, where I was telling you guys I brought a whole lot of extra shackles and things like that. In those conditions, when you drop below zero, everything freezes. So you will be using a soft shackle and it will freeze as hard as a rock to where it's almost impossible to use. So we were using multiple Yankum ropes and they would freeze so much, they would just be in like a twisted bundle and it would be like they were like a metal cable that's 1.5 inches thick. So bringing multiple recovery ropes was a great idea. Bringing a dynamic rope like a Yankum rope instead of a strap, I should have done that, should have thought of that. Some of the other things, I love Matt's off-road recovery, but I love how he always says like, hey, if you're using recovery boards, you aren't really stuck. And I think that that's true in a lot of situations, but in something like deep snow like this, where you're just battling for traction, you can't even make it anywhere. The recovery boards, we used a ton. For like an hour, we just would lay down 2 recovery boards and charge the snow to break through and then move the recovery boards forward. So recovery boards come in super handy with snow. I used them to level off my truck so I could sleep at night. So the recovery boards definitely shined. As far as one of the dumbest things I did, When you're going on a trip like this, where you really don't want to become a liability to search and rescue crews, you don't want to be the person that they have to go risk their lives to rescue you. You know what I mean? You want to be able to take care of yourself when you're out there. I do think it's wise to, once you have the right gear, maybe make like a laminated list that you really quickly go through the check boxes and make sure you actually have everything before you drive away. I actually left all of my groceries, my food, in the refrigerator. Now, I had all the dried food, backpacking food, for like 7.5 days. So I had plenty of food for extra days, even if we got stuck out there. But, you know, I bought other stuff that would have been much more fun to eat than, you know, cardboard macaroni. As far as clothing goes, I used every ounce of warm stuff, every single pair of gloves. I was just rotating them. I would have the defrost running on my window, and I would just be rotating through wet gloves that are rewarming constantly. So definitely use, you know, bring lots of gloves. The chains were super interesting. It really wasn't the right snow conditions for them to excel. But weirdly, as long as I wasn't cutting snow or plowing snow, they actually did pretty good as paddles. The Mickey Thompsons were amazing in the snow. So one of the other thing that actually shined probably second highest to the sleeping bag was actually the lockers, which is really interesting because there's a big debate on like, do lockers work in snow or do lockers not work in snow? And I think every variable comes into play, like how heavy your vehicle is. Maybe if your vehicle is light enough to float, you don't need them, just use traction control. Well, I'm in too old of a vehicle. It doesn't even have modern traction control. But I did find that when I was trying to get through this snow, if I didn't at least have my rear locker engaged, I wasn't really getting anywhere. And you know, you don't really want to be using your front locker a lot when you're steering a whole bunch. It's not really great for it. But when you're just plowing snow in a straight line, being able to use, just fully lock it up, lock front, center, and rear, I was noticing far, far better results with lockers in that snow than without. Obviously, if you're skating on ice and different things, a lot of times you don't want to be using your lockers. But in this case, it was working really well. Okay, so the final thing worth talking about is you just don't understand how many things freeze when you're in sub-zero wheeling for a couple days. We had a lot of problems with airing up and airing down. So I have an ARB dual compressor that's installed inside the cab in the back of the Land Cruiser. When we were airing up and airing down, I just use one hose and I go to each tire and I do one tire at a time. And a lot of people hate doing that. And they have like those systems where they can air up all 4 tires at the same time. But when you're trying to juggle all those cords, you inevitably have some of the heads dragging in the snow. So on the first day, everybody aired up fine. But by that evening and by that night and the following 2 days, all those air compressor hoses that had drug in the snow had frozen ice inside of them and were no longer working. And then some of the air compressors that were stored in the back. You know, air, when you're making a compressor compress air, it creates liquid, liquid freezes to ice. Lots of things were starting to get clogged. And not only that, when they were clogged and they had ice in them, when they did get them to work, the ice would melt and then refreeze, and it was actually freezing the hose onto their tire. So we had to use my torch to actually get the hoses off the tires. So in snow, just having a simple onboard air compressor that's inside your cab and having a single hose that you make sure you don't drag in the snow worked perfectly. I had 0 issues airing up and airing down, and kind of everyone else who had the fancier systems actually ran into a lot of trouble. But that's because their systems were stored in the back of their trucks where it's frozen and were definitely getting in the snow. So just think about that when you go out into sub-zero snow wheeling. The weather, man, just everything freezes. Your clothes were freezing, your boots were freezing solid, your recovery ropes, your shackles, everything was freezing solid. The car, underneath the car would become so packed in snow, you couldn't even see anything or have anything move. I've actually had it happen once on my Tundra where we parked it and the heat from the engine created some icicles that froze the ABS sensor to the ground. And when I backed up, it just ripped it off and it put the Tundra in limp mode. So paying attention to everything that's freezing and trying to break ice off of it and manage it, that's kind of a big deal. All in all, the loadout that I showed you guys did really well. Most of the safety gear that's like disaster gear that obviously we didn't use, I wouldn't change it. I'd still bring it. Your hope is that you're never gonna have to use your first aid kit in a lot of that gear, but in a worst case scenario, it's definitely good to have. But everything else, I really didn't feel like I was missing much other than that final checklist that maybe would help me bring my groceries, that would have reminded me to bring my dynamic rope instead of just the straps that I already had in there. But yeah, all in all, I think that's a pretty good kit. I used a lot of the kit. Even the people that I was with, Nate used some of my tools. We definitely, people were borrowing the torch. There's a lot of stuff in that kit that was used. So if you plan on going snow wheeling, I think it's worth reviewing that kit and seeing how much of it you think you're gonna need. I hope this video was helpful. We had a ton of fun. If you want the blow-by-blow, play-by-play of our trip, go check out Nate's channel at Dirt Lifestyle. He's got an amazing video that's more highlighting how incredibly hard this snow was to drive in. It was a crazy trip. And we threw ourselves at it as hard as we could. We did not make it to the peak. Spoiler, but man, it wasn't for lack of trying. We even added an extra day, whole entire day dedicated to just ramming the snow and plowing snow, and we still didn't make it to the peak. That's how hard the conditions were. Super interesting trip, learned a lot about myself, a lot about the vehicles. I would highly recommend it.